Dudes, what's up? Don B from the Don B podcast. Check out Atheist Edge. They're all over YouTube. I watch them. I watch every episode. And I'm not lying to you. I would never lie to you. I just lied to you.
All non-believers vainly deny God in favor of their false scientific worldview. Now, this is just dumb. I don't think the majority of non-believers are scientists or science communicators, and I don't think that many people who do deconvert, particularly those that have been very much enthralled by the religion, they don't deconvert because of a false worldview. So I actually really believed the worldview that Christianity asks people to adopt. I had a genuine connection with that worldview, and I deconverted despite that. It's that meme amongst Christians that, because the Bible says that everyone has a knowledge of God and they're just denying God because God prints that onto the hearts of every person because it's a good method of controlling people because it helps them to reconcile the fact that there are people that don't share their beliefs, because it's not that the belief is faulty or the belief is not really a convincing belief. It's because that person has chosen not to believe, which is not a very rational proposition. Basically, this is just a way for Christians to make sure that amongst themselves they can justify why others don't share their belief. Because it's such a conviction, like it's something that you believe so fervently if you've been in that position of being a very fundamentalist, very charismatic type of Christian, which I was a Pentecostal. So the idea of knowledge that is granted to everyone was pretty common. I suppose what they don't teach you is that that's not the actual case. That people do genuinely not believe in God. And it has nothing to do with scientific worldviews in many people's cases. In many people's cases, it's just because of the inconsistency. So just like in the point 309, when we talk about the Israelites and the lack of evidence for their sojourn through Egypt and out through to the land of Canaan, I mean, that's not a vain denial of God existing. That's a rational assessment of the facts as they stand, and a decision to not accept them or their claims seems reasonable. They don't teach you that.
There are no world-class universities in the Islamic world. Of the top 400 universities on Earth, only 5 are in Muslim countries. 4 in Turkey and 1 in Saudi Arabia.
Jesus is not mentioned in any Roman or Greek non-biblical source until at least 80 years after his death. In the entire first Christian century, Jesus is not mentioned by a single Greek or Roman historian, religion scholar, politician, philosopher, or poet. His name never occurs in a single inscription. It is never found in a single piece of private correspondence. 0 zip references.
If Allah willed, he could take away the hearing and the sight of all those foolish ones who chose to disbelieve, if he wanted to. But he doesn't want to right now. He reserves the option. Don't test him. This is how Allah seems to behave. He could instantly strike all those atheists down with deafness and blindness, but he doesn't want to do it right this minute. Wow, I don't know anything about the Islam religion, but it doesn't take much to interpret this. Live in fear. Always be looking over your shoulder. And once you turn back and decide to believe, it still's not going to fix it.
Same-sex unions are not an attempt to redefine the institution of marriage. Marriage predates your religion, In fact, it predates recorded history. It is not yours to define, control, or sanction in the first place. Marriage began as nothing more than a strategic alliance between families. Monogamy did not become mainstream until sometime between the 6th and 9th centuries. Marriages based on love, mutual admiration, and sexual desire only became popular about 250 years ago. Equal partnerships have only been common for about 50 years. So this is, I think this is mostly right. I think, though, monogamy, it depends on what we mean by monogamy. And the whole purpose of marriage was, I mean, as Jim says, it's a strategic alliance between families. It really goes before that. I think the purpose of marriage is about like control of the reproductive process, because once you had families transition from being migratory to being agricultural, and they were stuck in one place, for generations, then the land that you work matters, right? And so maintaining control over the land that you work and the land that gives you food and that you defend from other people, maintaining control over that matters, and who is in control over that matters. And so at that point, you really want to know or feel confident that the people who are taking over the land from you, and you who are giving the land, you're giving the land at, presumably when you die or before, that they are related to you, so that your sons, right? So you want to know that your sons are your sons. And it's the particular fact of biology that for men, it's not as easy to know that your son is your son as it is for a woman to know that her son is her son. For the simple fact that you're able to see the child actually comes out of the mother's body, but you're not sure which man may have been the actual biological father, may have contributed the genetic material for that progeny. And so that creates a little bit of anxiety for the man if he wants to be 100% sure that that the children that his woman, whatever you want to call her, wife or whatever, if he wants to be sure that the children that come out of the woman that he has sex with are his, then he has to ensure that he is the only one having sex with her. And so therein lies the initial level of marriage and what marriage became. It's really about controlling the reproductive process. So if you need to control the woman in order to ensure that you can make sure that her progeny are your progeny, then you need to physically own her. She needs to be your property, and so that's why it's expeditious for women to become property in agricultural societies and for them to belong to men, so that men don't have to worry about, are the kids that they're passing their farm along to, are they actually theirs, or do they belong to somebody else who was sneakier or whatever. And so marriage is just a way of sort of locking down those reproductive anxieties. And when it becomes a financial transaction, basically, so you buy a woman from her husband, from her father. You buy a woman from her father for the right to exclusive sexual access to her. That is the earliest layer of what marriage is, and it has nothing to do with romantic intent, right? It just is. I mean, it could be throughout the years. It's not to say that nobody who was forced to be married to somebody else didn't love them. It's possible, and you feel affection for somebody, even if it's not, if you didn't have a meet cute, let's say, and your parents essentially sold you to some guy, you could have warm feelings for that person after a time. But yeah, so the idea of marriage that exists now is a very, very modern thing. The idea of romance playing such a significant portion, or playing such a significant role in coupling and in marriages themselves, and that is, I think that's been suggested that really came about as the novel became a popular mode of literature, and people started reading stories about people falling in love. And once they did that, they wanted that for themselves. Because things like that had happened. As I said, people could fall in love, and you could even fall in love with somebody that you could then marry. It just wasn't necessarily the normal state of things. And then, as Jim says, the idea of equal partnerships is definitely a modern innovation, and in the way that we have it now. I mean, you could have, there were different societies over time that gave more or less rights to women and wives. So women might have had some property rights, or they might have had some legal rights of their own in different sorts of societies. But the way it exists now in modern times, with men and women completely equal, or in the intent of it being that they're completely equal, that is a modern innovation. So yes, marriage is it's a concept, and it's a concept that has been modified and has changed over time. And so there's nothing to stop it from changing again in the future. And who knows what marriage will look like 100 years from now. It may be something slightly different. It might not change at all. It might be completely different. Who knows? Maybe marriage completely goes away. It wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world, especially since the purpose of marriage initially was just to do with property rights. And there's ways of having romantic relationships without necessarily entering into a contract, the way that marriage is now. So we'll see what happens.
We never die. We are all immortal spiritual beings known as Thetans that inhabit our temporary physical meat bodies. When these physical bodies die, we Thetans just go find another one to live in. This process of reincarnation has been going on for 4 quadrillion years. The ultimate goal of humanity is to return to a perfect energy state of operating Thetan, a being comprised entirely of energy and capable of manipulating reality through sheer force of will. Marty Rathburn, a former high executive in the Church of Scientology, said, "Hey, if you think you lived before and have memories of it, great, but I hope you don't expect anybody to believe you, or if a little girl believes her doll is a sentient being, so be it. It makes her feel good and hurts nobody under most circumstances. I think we can all agree on that. But once money and behavior and control get involved, most people rightly lose their sense of humor very quickly. So sure, do whatever floats your boat, but let's not pretend we're having a scientific discussion here." Unquote. I was never here.
God told Thomas Hammer to attack a young skateboarder. He was arrested and charged with felony assault. Jesus told Victoria Solis to drown her 3-year-old son in a puddle. She was arrested and charged with felony child abuse. The Archangel Michael told Levi Staver that his grandmother was a witch and ordered him to kill her with a Bowie knife. He was charged with criminal homicide. Jesus and the Virgin Mary told Tammy Estep to kill her husband because he is Satan's spawn. She was arrested and charged with attempted murder. God told Abraham to take his son to the top of a hill, stab him, and then burn his body. He is, to this day, one of the most respected figures in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
If you're so sure of your religion, why would you care so much that others doubt it? Why would you cry at funerals? Why don't you question it critically? Why is your religion the exact same as your parents and their parents? Well, as a lifelong Christian, My relationship and my identity were tied up in my religion. I was born into a Christian family. Both my parents, my mother's side and my father's side, were Christians. So were both of their parents. It's tracked back generations. I never once questioned it, ever. Never thought about it once. So when someone would come to me and say and question my faith, it was a personal insult. I couldn't understand why someone would not believe in the God that I believed in. Now, there's so many questions that I'm finding answers to and having the right to ask those questions. To be approached with a question of why we get upset, I can only speak for myself. You've insulted my intelligence and my personal choices. But now, things have changed. Critical thinking has brought me to a place where I can't say I believe anymore. Why we are crying at funerals, I'm crying for the person that now has to live without the one that has deceased. That's what the crying is about, at least for me. It's not the person that has passed. It's definitely me having to live without that person in my life. And in the past, I can honestly say there's been a few times at funerals, I was a little bit jealous. They have left to go to a place where there's no pain, no nothing anymore, and it's like, wow, and I'm still here having to deal with all of this day in, day out. So fact-checking and apologetics and critical thinking has brought me to a new path of where I am today. I'm still transitioning to be able to live as an atheist, but definitely headed in that direction.